Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Tanya Cole-Lesnick has been a psychotherapist, as a licensed clinical social worker, and a coach since 1995. After group therapy changed her life, she decided to change her profession, and she received her master's degree in social work from New York University. She has extensive experience in outpatient hospital mental health, in private practice, and in wellness center settings. From those experiences over the years, she has identified her most important focus: helping people to clear energetic clutter so they can focus on what matters most to them. She does this by helping clients access and honor their truth, to change habits that don't serve them, and to heal faulty narratives so that they are living in alignment inside and out. Her work revolves around a combination of intimate therapeutic groups and individual sessions. She finds that as the sharing of inner worlds and being human together in a safe place, both collectively and individually, this leads to an incredibly powerful combination that leads to lasting transformation. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's a delight to see you again. I'm hoping you can start us off today by letting us know a little bit about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Absolutely. But thank you. It's very nice to see you as well. And I'm looking forward to what unfolds. So the work that I do now, I actually started my career out as a graphic designer. And during that time, when I was in my mid-20s, I was struggling to have a long-term love relationship, did not understand what was in the way for me, and did not initially think therapy would be an option to explore it. I felt a lot of stigma connected to therapy, and I felt like maybe my problems weren't legit enough. But with some time, I opened up to the idea of it and got some names and numbers and connected to this wonderful therapist named Bonnie. And in our early work together, she suggested I add group therapy to the mix, which scared me. I was being very vulnerable with her and opening up more than probably I had with anybody else. And the thought of doing that with people who at the time were strangers really scared me. But I was building some trust in her, and she really thought it would be helpful. And I was pretty intrigued, so I went with it. And I think it was in that combination of doing some group work and individual work. So I went into the group situation, and although there were times for sure when it was challenging, I also experienced knowing I'm not alone, being able to be on this journey with other people on their journeys towards personal growth, whatever that meant for each of us, but feeling very less flawed. I think I went into that experience feeling like, well, there must be something unlovable about me. That was how I explained struggling with a long-term love relationship. But went into that situation realizing that we're all human, what some human struggles look like. And during this part of the journey, early in the journey, I did meet who later became my husband, and we just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. So the reason why I went in for therapy and then group happened. I met somebody I was able to have a long-term love relationship with. But what I didn't anticipate was connecting to myself, learning how to love myself, learning that I had needs, what needs look like, how to navigate the world with sort of that being a goal, to connect to myself and make sure my needs were taken care of, realizing I wasn't flawed, all those things. And so that experience actually was such a pivotal time in my life. And I stopped being a graphic designer, went back to school, got a master's degree in social work from NYU, became a therapist, later a coach, and I've been doing that work now for almost 3 decades. And I'm very passionate about helping people have transformations of their own, learn who they are, connect to their truest selves, help them get in alignment in the way that they live with what's in their hearts. And I still find group to be one of the most powerful ways to help people get there.
Well, so, the question that comes up for me is, how did you overcome the fear or trepidation? Or
I don't think I fully overcame it. I mean, I guess
you overcame it because you did. I mean, I know a lot of people, they can't bring themselves to go to a group.
Fair enough. I mean, I think what I meant by saying I don't know that I fully overcame it is that I went into that situation still feeling some fear. I think what happened, though, is once I was in the room with other people, there were absolutely moments that felt scary where I had my anxiety got kicked up for sure, but I also felt welcomed. I also felt, as I started to, even within the very first session, hear other people's stories, feel not alone. And that was such a huge feeling for me to settle into and exhale. How did I overcome it enough, though, to go? I think my trust in my therapist at the time was an important part of it. I knew she would be there. She did both. She ran the group and did the individual. So I think that was an important piece of it. And the fact that she thought it was going to be helpful. And I think there's a quote, and I'm not going to say it right, but about the pain to stay tight in a bud becomes worse than the fear of blossoming. I'm not saying it right, but and I think that was true for me. I think I so longed to figure out what was in the way for me so that I could have the kind of love relationship that I saw for myself, that I was willing to tolerate some of the discomfort of going into a situation that felt scary.
And is there a way for you to remember what the specific fears were that were coming up as you were in individual therapy thinking about participating in group?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest fear was that if I were to share these things with other people, besides a therapist who felt like she felt safer to me, it felt like she kind of signed on to being on my side, that other people would see, oh, right, yeah, she is unlovable. Oh, yeah, she is flawed. And I think that was my biggest fear, was to be seen in all the ways my inner critic was sort of saying that I showed up in the world. What were the things that were unlovable about me, and that would get verified.
So is there also a way for you to talk about what do you think is the dynamic in the group that was significantly different from what you were getting from the individual work?
Yeah, I think part of what happened to me as I connected more and engaged in the process more is that people would respond to me finding some of what I offered to be helpful, feeling very connected to me as I was sharing some of my vulnerable things in a way that therapists don't typically do, because they're not on their own journeys. And there is a certain kind of, it's a professional relationship. And even though my therapist was very warm and I felt very connected to her, it felt different to have people who were responding to me very spontaneously and expressing resonance with some of what I was saying and feeling support from me. I think all those things that we communicated with each other and receiving back, sort of getting myself reflected back from other people, it carried more weight, maybe in a way, not because, of course, the therapy too was also powerful and important. And I continue to do a combination of group work and individual work. But there is something about however many people were in the room at the time, getting something reflected back multiple times. So as I was talking through a struggle, maybe having a number of people say, well, I don't find you that way or something. Let's say I was sharing something about an insecurity, and I perhaps got reflected back to me that people saw me in a much more positive light than I was able to see myself. And several people shared their own experiences of me. That was very powerful. And also to hear other people's stories and see myself in their stories, that too, I think, led to a lot of healing.
What was the size of the group that you first went into?
It varied. The cap was at 12. It was in New York City. It was a tiny little office. And I remember she would always put the chairs out, and at the very most 12. And it was a tight squeeze. But I would say, depending on the week, because not everybody was there every week, it was usually probably from somewhere between 6 and 12 would be there.
Is that what you strive for in your groups today?
12 actually is a little bigger than I even like. I really like a small, intimate group. So for me, really 10 is where I feel is a good number. And I like a small group. I feel like there are times, if not everybody's there one week and we get a smaller group, that used to trigger some anxiety in me as a facilitator, thinking, well, where is everybody and how I'm going to run a good group with fewer people here? But I always find whatever combination shows up is like an amazing combination. And if it's a smaller group, there is a tendency to go a little bit deeper. It feels a little bit safer maybe to go deeper with a smaller group. And I kind of love all those experiences.
Yeah, that my thought just, and so the smaller the group, the deeper you go. And then if you're on one-on-one, you go even deeper. That's where my mind just went. And I know that I've had the experience where people have the opposite. And unless there's a bigger number, they don't feel comfortable sharing. So, do you have structure to your groups? Do you have a free form? What do you do?
The way that I run my groups is my groups go every other week. And the week in between, I'll offer a topic to the group, and it grows out of the group from the prior week. So we're evolving and growing as a group. The topics are always some kind of human thing. We just went through, of course, New Year. So we talked about just reviewing the year. What were some of what they hoped to get out of group? What did they feel shifted in their lives? What are they hoping for or wanting to be intentional about for the year ahead? So that's what we talked about the last time. We'll talk about various things. So it could be something like energy, what depletes you, what replenishes you, and just have a conversation, peeling away the layers with that. So they know they're coming into the group with a topic and bringing their current selves into that topic or anything that kind of comes up as they're exploring the topic. And then each person gets a turn to share that. And then when each person has shared, I ask the others to talk about what's resonating with them as they're hearing the others share. And so then we get this kind of overlap of, I hear that really resonates for me, and this is why. And we really get into sort of more details about how we overlap, and probably things that people were not necessarily thinking about. And that's one of the reasons why I like groups so much. So if somebody brings in a topic or their own experience and they're sharing about it and somebody's like, oh yeah, me too. Sometimes they weren't even connecting to whatever it was that touched on, but it's that resonance that helps them realize, oh, that's in there too. That's another layer of me as I'm learning more about myself. And that can be so powerful.
I have had people at times that are very hesitant to go into groups because they're conflict aversive. Do you have conflicts in your group? If that happens, how do you handle it? What do you say to reassure people that might be conflict aversive?
I have sometimes had conflicts. I don't have, typically that's not something that comes up. I think we do our best to pause, take a breath, check in with what's happening. I'm trying to even remember what some of the issues might have been that came up for people, but typically not. I often, when I'm running groups, I pride myself in really creating a space that people do feel some safety in. And it seems to be, people often know me first. They have at least had an individual session with me to talk through. So they have a sense of who I am and how I show up. And I think that there is some trust in that. And I get it. If it's only one session, there's a limit to how much they really know me or can trust me. But I don't typically have that. But I do have a lot of fear for sure. Like especially if I'm working with some individual clients and I'm suggesting group to them, often they don't at first say yes to that because they are interested in having my sole focus on them, being able to work through what they want to work through with my attention alone. And there is fear about maybe not necessarily conflict, although that's in there, but just similar to what I expressed about sharing things with people they don't know. So, and I have had the experience when somebody resists, and then they finally get into group and they're like, okay, now I get it. So, I definitely help people foster some relationships of you're not alone. This is what we do. They've already done some of that sharing with me. So there's some normalizing of that kind of vulnerability that we do in group together. So
if you do remote groups, video like this, what's the percentage of that versus in person?
I only do remote groups now, other than retreats. I do small in-person retreats, which is, obviously it's a group, but it's different, but they're similarities. I mean, it is a group work. So, but all my, therapeutic groups are virtual now.
And is that just since the coronavirus restrictions, or was that before that?
It's all of them since the coronavirus started, but I had done some virtual groups prior, but it was a mix before, and now it's all.
So what would your assessment be about the differences between how things went when you did more in person and now that you're doing them all remote?
I think equally as powerful work can be done. I think it's a little trickier in terms of just logistically, who's going to start, that kind of thing. It seems that it's a little harder to gauge that organically in Zoom, I think, than in person. But I don't think that's a big issue. I think there are definitely some people who much prefer in person and don't necessarily want to even do Zoom. And then there are other people who like it just fine. So I think, but in terms of the work itself, it's interesting because when you're doing Zoom, often people are doing it from their homes. Occasionally they're doing it from their cars or somewhere else. And of course, it depends on the time of day because they could do it from their offices or wherever place of work if it's during the day. But you get to see somebody in their environment, which is another bit of information that you don't get when you're in person. And in person, you get a little bit more body language, but I think in the virtual, it's usually our faces are right in the screen. And so you can get some even subtleties of facial expression that maybe you don't see as readily in a group where you have a little bit more distance from somebody. So I feel like there are pros and cons, but they're both powerful.
Is there a theme that you start out with groups? Do you have groups for one set of issues or another, and then you plug people into them? Or do you just have the general therapy group for anybody that might be benefiting?
I have done themes before, but I don't anymore. Now, my coaching group is called Activate. And really the goal is to help people use this process to make some decisions, get some support that they need, have some accountability so that they can move forward on their journeys. And my goal is to help people access the clarity that they need so that they can continue forward. But the overlapping, I'm starting a new group, but I have done just women's group more recently. But the new group that I'm starting is men and women. So
it's a group without a theme. So it's not like for depression or for people who've lost a loved one, or it's just a therapy group.
Yes. Yeah. Coaching group. I'm really moving more towards coaching just because of the reach of it. I think it's helpful to be able to connect with people from wherever. And so I'm opening up to that process, which is sort of an adjustment, but enjoying it.
Okay. So you're opening up to what process? The idea of moving from therapy groups to coaching groups?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do you see the most poignant differences between the two?
I think the biggest difference is the action focus versus the healing focus, although both are in there. But I think it's in the therapy group, there might be a stronger focus on the healing piece. And in the coaching group, it's more like, I guess what's coming to my mind is the idea of personal training versus maybe physical therapy. So physical therapy is the idea your body really needs some healing and you're focusing on the exercises for those healing purposes. And then if you're moving towards personal training for exercise, that kind of thing, your goals are more, you're healed, you're coming from a place to heal, of healed, that you've been healed, and that you're moving forward to get stronger and go to whatever's next, and focusing on that. I think strength and that kind of capacity. So for me with the groups, it is moving from the healing part. It's for people who are either have already worked through a lot of their healing, but they have some hopes and dreams that perhaps some limiting beliefs are in the way, or they are stuck on some narratives or some patterns, and they want to shift those things so that they can move forward differently. And so then that's the focus of my groups, to help people move forward.
And so are you doing exclusively coaching groups now, or do you still do some therapy groups?
The groups are coaching groups, but I do individual therapy. So if somebody's not ready for a group, then they might do some work with me first to get to a place where some of that healing has been done and they feel ready to take on the group. And then we shift over into the more coaching focus. So it's a little bit sort of, I was going to say fluid, but it's one flows into the other. And then if somebody needs an extra bit of support as stuff comes up, then I'm available for that, which is part of what I think the value for me, to be able to offer therapy, but also coaching from that place of somebody who has the experience that I've had of all the years of the work that I've done, to be able to help people in both areas. If they need a little extra healing, what does that look like? And to help them move forward when they are steady and stable.
Wonderful. So what's the best way for people to contact?
The best way really is to go to my website, and my name's a little tricky, so I make it easier for people. So Clear Energetic Clutter is a way they can get to my website. And on there.
Is that a .com?
Yes, .com. Yes.
And if you just take a breath and settle in a little bit and think, okay, so, I've asked you a few questions about this or that, and we had the beginning. What's an area, an aspect of the work you do, either that you find personally rewarding or personally challenging that we haven't even talked about that you want to throw in here?
Well, it's interesting because as I was just saying, the website, Clear Energetic Clutter, I think that as I've been working on distilling my own work down into, well, what is it that I actually do that I help people with? And I think it's that to help them identify, well, what is energetic clutter for each of us? And it's what are the things that are like pulling at us for our attention and our energy that are not necessarily the things that we want to be focusing on, but there's a certain amount of we all can have these automatic thoughts or negative inner critics or ways of focusing on things that take up a lot of space and can be depleting for us. And so to help people really identify for them, where is their energy going that sort of supports who they are and supports their journeys, and where is it keeping them treading water and stuck in, without getting any traction.
In thinking about clearing energetic clutter, do you have tools, techniques, skills that you teach people in these groups, or is it just assignments to take action and then watch what comes up that might block them from that?
It's more that. I mean, it's choosing a few action steps, not too many at once, seeing what comes up, learning from that, but ultimately to start pinpointing what does matter to you, what doesn't matter to you. And is that working for you to put your energy there? And there's acceptance in there too. It's not like we can only focus on the best stuff and none of the hard stuff. There are things that are good use of our energy, even if it's uncomfortable or it's not fun for us. So really getting discerning about that. But no, it's more organic. And we use this process as a way to, and this process, I'm still talking about the groups, but using that as a way to get some clarity, plan some steps, have some accountability, learn from other people what comes up for us. And as we get that clarity, we can choose much more, in alignment with whatever it is that we're learning about ourselves along the way.
So I'm clearing energetic clutter and I'm getting clearer about what gives me energy and what drains energy from me. And if I'm going to be working with you, do we spend a significant amount of time on life purpose, overall goals?
Yes to all of that. Yeah. I often start my groups at the very beginning when it's a brand new group, but then once the groups are going, people join an existing group and it grows from that place. It's still an initial question that I ask, which is, what are you longing for? And I like the word longing because it really has this emotional weight to it. What's in your heart? What is something that you know that you kind of pull towards, but that maybe isn't there for you? And I know that not everybody knows the answer to that question. So helping people even start to take some guesses then, what comes up for you, and start to develop a better understanding of the answer to that question. What is it that somebody is longing for?
It's a toughie for some of us, right?
For sure.
That's not an easy thing to come up with. The life purpose, mission statement, bigger life goals. So I know the value of having support in refining that and clarifying that set of targets.
Yeah. And I also think that so many people live in a way of getting constantly depleted that they don't create space for themselves to even check in about some of that. And if they can't access some of the, what are you longing for, but they have a sense they want something more, something different than how they're living in that moment, then helping them realize what's depleting them can be the place to start, so that they can even start to get to a place where they can access that sense of longing.
Yeah, if you don't have that energy, then you can't even clarify the questions.
That's right.
And if you don't clarify those questions about what are you longing for, what is your life purpose, where would you like to go with life, then by default, you tend to live into somebody else's expectations for
That's
you,
right.
whether it was family or friends or just the general thing you pick up from the culture about what somebody your gender and age ought to be doing at this time in your life.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing with us. I know personally that groups can be this catalyst for change that sometimes the one-on-one therapy isn't for people. And I'm grateful for you to take the time to share with our audience your benefit from it, and how you got started on it was how personal experience that it really made a dramatic change in your life. And I think it's a wonderful role model that you bring to say, okay, this changed me. I'm attuned with it. I'm going to redo my career and do that for a life.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, just to mention, on my website, I have like a 10-minute documentary of that story. And
I loved it. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it. So, yeah. And part of the inspiration for me to even build or create that documentary is because it's so scary for so many of us. And to be able to say, this is something that can help you access your own truth. I think that's my biggest passion, is to help people access their truth, whatever that means for each person. And many times people are sort of drowning in some of this stuff that gets so depleting, and to help them create some space in their lives for finding their truth.
And if we don't have somebody helping us figure out, is this energizing me or depleting me? Some people don't even know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all of this time you've given us. And I look forward to getting any feedback if you hear from our people as this will get published. And again, give us the website you want them to tap into.
clearenergeticclutter.com.
Excellent.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Tanya Cole-Lesnick has been a psychotherapist, as a licensed clinical social worker, and a coach since 1995. After group therapy changed her life, she decided to change her profession, and she received her master's degree in social work from New York University. She has extensive experience in outpatient hospital mental health, in private practice, and in wellness center settings. From those experiences over the years, she has identified her most important focus: helping people to clear energetic clutter so they can focus on what matters most to them. She does this by helping clients access and honor their truth, to change habits that don't serve them, and to heal faulty narratives so that they are living in alignment inside and out. Her work revolves around a combination of intimate therapeutic groups and individual sessions. She finds that as the sharing of inner worlds and being human together in a safe place, both collectively and individually, this leads to an incredibly powerful combination that leads to lasting transformation.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.